we're good to get started. We're going to get our screen working in a minute and get some information to you. But welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. We had 1,000 people register, so we've got a lot going on and lots of sessions and lots of information. So welcome to the Firm's Growth Club Summit. It is so nice to have you here. And I'm going to be able to go through a few housekeeping things with you, but I hope that you're learning a lot and you're getting a lot out of these sessions. We're hearing lots and lots on social media, and we want to hear a whole lot more, so keep it coming. So really to sort of start off with some of the housekeeping and to talk through some of the elements that I need you to know for these sessions. So all these sessions are being recorded. They are being recorded and transcribed by Final, our partner. They are an AI note taker, and so they are helping us to record all of this and make sure we get all of this knowledge and all of this info and be able to download it even more so in your brain. So very thanks to Vinyl for that one. Secondly, you can get CPD, I almost want to say CPD points for this as a point per session. So hopefully either you learn something or at least you get a point for it, but I'm sure you'll learn something anyway. And finally, you have a chance to win $500. So I talked about learning, I talked about points, and now I'm talking about hard cash. So you can have the chance to win $500 by simply going on to social media, going on and tagging the firm and with the hashtag of Grow Club. And tell us about your experiences. Tell us about what you learned and what you listened to and who you liked. So please go ahead and do that, and we'll be able to give someone some money, because that's always fun. And lastly, I just want to do a big shout out to all of our partners for this event. It takes a lot of people to back this, to say, yeah, let's do an event and let's invest in this industry, and we're really grateful for that. So big thanks to Intuit. So the Growth Club Summit is powered by Intuit, so really grateful for them to partner with us. But we have many other partners on this, and so very grateful to them. I think, can we show them on the screen? Are we showing all of our partners? I want to make sure we're presenting those partners. They can all have their brands up there, and really as well, you're going to hear from lots of different of those partners over these days, but being able to know what tools and what help and support you need for where you're at right now. So yeah, definitely recommend for you to look at some of those partners. We'll get that screen to you and make sure we're talking about them, but I don't want to delay anymore, because I have someone to introduce to you. I've got Cassandra Scott to introduce to you, and I think you're going to really enjoy this session and get a lot from it, because Cassandra knows what it's like to be in your shoes. She's someone that was in your shoes, but now is giving back to this industry a whole lot more, and being able to teach and talk to some really critical on the ground things that you can start implementing. Cassandra is also representing XBert today. We love XBert and their intelligence, and so she's going to be talking a lot about AI and what it can do for you today, and what it can do for you in the long term as well. So I'm going to hand over to Cassandra Scott. I know you're going to have an amazing session. Over to you.
Thanks, Liz. Appreciated. And look, just to start, we have thrown a poll up on the screen. So if I can get you to take a moment just as we're chatting about the introduction to respond to that, that would be brilliant. But look, you know, welcome. I'm actually really excited today to talk to you about scaling your firm. And the key thing about that is it's actually not by necessarily hiring more people, but by working far more smartly within the firm with the existing resources that you've got. We know that resources are constrained at the moment. Everybody that you talk to, those discussions are happening everywhere. We can't find staff to provide services. And finding people to work and an increased demand for services means that we really need to start to think more strategically about how we operate our practices more smartly. So this session's for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're an accountant, a bookkeeper, both run a standalone accounting practice or bookkeeping practice or a hybrid practice. The information that we're hoping to share with you today is applicable to everybody that's involved in our industry. And our goal is to actually show you how AI-powered insights, and especially through XBert, can actually help you refine and also broaden your services. So thanks very much for that first poll, and we might just get the second one launched as well. They're quick polls up just to see how things are going on, and we'll take the responses from those a little bit later. Now, you know, smart firms aren't necessarily bigger. You don't have to be a massive multi-seat, complex organisation to be a smart and successful firm. A smart firm could be one person, it could be a small group of, 3 or 4 people. So I think the key is that bigger is not necessarily always better, but smart firms are connected and they're more proactive in the work that they undertake. And the other consideration too is whether or not bookkeeping is the key focus, or advisory is the key focus, or it's a hybrid type of service, or it's an accounting service. If you can expand or refine without having to overhaul the technology or the team that you're using, then that's actually starting to do things smartly. So what we're going to be looking at is what have you already got, and how can you start to leverage around that. The other thing is that what we want to talk about is XBert solves real bookkeeping problems. It's role agnostic and it's scalable. So fundamentally, it doesn't really matter whether you're an accountant or whether you're a bookkeeper. We know that quality client data starts with the client data within the ledger, and fundamentally that generally falls under the bookkeeping hat. So what we're saying is that XBert will solve the data integrity and data quality problems, irrespective of what your firm's outputs are to your clients. And again, whether it's accounting, bookkeeping, advisory, or any of those things. Moving on to the next slide. So here's a bit of a question for you about, why clients want more. And let's begin with what's driving change. And clients these days are often the ones that are actually driving change within our practices. The client experience has changed, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. And I think COVID actually has been a really interesting trigger in some of this. They want fewer touch points with practices. They want faster turnaround of the work, and they want proactive advice. And we've seen this evolve with the uptake of email and other online comms tools that are in use, and access to mobile devices on the desktop. There's this sense of instantaneous in terms of how we work and the client reaction and requirement for those sorts of responses. I think the other thing to consider is that clients actually don't always know what they need, but they know often when something is missing. And if you can give them the solution or support that's actually needed, or if you can't give them the solution and support that's actually needed, then the chances are they may start to look elsewhere. So clients, I think, are starting to become a little bit more sophisticated in their expectations of the advisors that they're working with. And again, whether that's a bookkeeping advisor or an accounting advisor, the expectations of what we can provide are actually being increased, and the timeliness in which we provide that information is actually being decreased. So firms that start to unify services around bookkeeping, tax, and advisory are actually starting to really stand out and retain more clients. Now, that's not to say that, the model of the future is going to be more of a hybrid business model, but what we are starting to see is where a practice, whether it's bookkeeping and accounting, is starting to offer more unified services. And for a bookkeeping practice, that might be sort of higher level advisory. It could be partnering with a tax practices working with bookkeepers, all of those things. Clients are appreciating that, and the client retention is actually much higher. So the other thing too is it's not actually about doing it all yourself. It's about enabling the coordination and visibility across the roles within your practices. It's about leveraging off of your existing workflows. It's about leveraging off of your existing team. It's about having top-down visibility of what's happening in your practice, and it's about standardizing the work that you undertake. So it's this rinse, wash, repeat cycle that we're actually looking at. And it's not, as I said, about doing it all yourself. It's about creating the visibility, coordination, and consistency in how you deliver. And for those in Australia that are tuning in, the spectre of QMS that is, on our plates at the moment is about repeatability and visibility and consistency and standards in the work. Now, we've just thrown up another very quick poll, and it's about, workflow visibility and team stress. And it's about your confidence levels over your team workload and where your team bottlenecks are. So, often where is the real bottleneck? And we find that irrespective of whether you're an accounting practice or a bookkeeping practice or a hybrid practice, it's at the bookkeeping layer. So, we know that that's where everything starts in terms of data output or output to our clients. And that's probably where quality and timeliness actually start to matter most. So we know that bookkeeping teams are often working on multiple clients at any one time with high volumes of data. We've got our compliance obligations under the Tax Practitioners Board Code of Conduct, which means we shouldn't be cutting corners. But we all know that we actually could be spending more of our time adding better value to our clients with things like advisory services, and that the continued requirement and the questions and the levels we need to support compliance often build friction points in with our clients. So how do we actually start to minimize those friction points as well? Bookkeepers want fewer corrections. Accountants want clean data. And this is where XBert can actually really, really help with both. So, what we want to aim for is no more bulk resolution at the end of a month or end of a quarter. Those peaks and troughs that we used to have with, high end of quarter workload, low between quarter tempos, rinse, wash, repeat, have now significantly reduced with the advent of cloud accounting systems. We have data available to us 24/7, 7 days a week, so we can actually address and work with clients' data on a more frequent and regular basis. No more bulk resolution at the end of the month or quarter, which can leave you in situations where documentation may have been lost or memory may have faded. We want things to happen faster. We want to catch things as they happen as opposed to having to wait for a period of time. And we know by experience that the best chance for resolution of any issue within our clients' files is to actually address it as soon as possible after it occurs. We don't want to be chasing that tradie down a month or 2 months after they've spent that money to find that the piece of paper was shoved in the bottom of their ute and they've opened the door to do something that's flown out, never to be seen again. We can usually get a better response if it's done within the next 24 to 48 hours. It flags issues like uncoded bank feed lines. We're looking for things like GST mismatches. We're looking about things like late payroll, all of those sort of data quality and timeliness things that we want to keep a track of and keep control of within our practices. And the important thing is to understand that with all parts of the ledger, issues need to be flagged in real time, and the reporting of those notifications and of those issues can actually be coordinated to a single person within your practice. And it might be a client manager, it might be a lead bookkeeper, it might be a lead payroll person. But by focusing on the anomalies and the errors and making sure that they're being sent to the right person at the right time within your practice, you're actually going to start to reduce the friction points that you actually now have historically had with your clients. And if they're going to the right and the targeted person within your practice, it's more simple to actually reach out to the client to get them reviewed and resolved. And the thing that we talk about with XBert is that it starts to give you a really systemized way to fix the friction so that the right work is done at the right time by the right person. It gives you clarity around that. And it's not about building out, as we said, additional resources. It's about better utilizing and managing the resources that you actually currently have. So, how do AI alerts improve workflow quality? And quality is the thing that we all want to really, really focus on highly. And this is where XBert really, really does shine. It uses AI to identify workflow issues in real time. For bookkeepers, it's using alerts to prevent and resolve errors before your BASs, before your end of financial year, before you're ready to process payroll, all of those touch points that we have with our clients. And with accountants, the data that is coming out of your client's accounting software, you can actually look at a much higher level of trust in, because it's accurate and it's timely and it's ready for your review. So if you're working collaboratively with bookkeepers, or you're utilizing within your practices yourself, you've got confidence levels around the data quality, which means you're not having to constantly go in and review and revisit just to make sure, because XBert is doing that heavy lifting for you. So what we're going to do in a sec is we're actually going to jump in and have a look at some of the XBert alerts that trigger around data quality. And you know, what this is just a small sample of what is actually available to you from an alert perspective. And we'll talk a little bit more about sort of how you can visualize within your practice. So I'm actually just going to share another screen. So if I just stop share and reshare another screen, which will be this lovely little screen here. This is where we're starting to look at our XBert alerts. And this is a demo file, but these are the types of alerts that are actually available to you within your practice. So if we, there's over 80 of them. We've got only 55 sitting here, but there's actually a lot more. But if we look at duplicate as an example, and why are they not all coming up? Demo file, templates, duplicate. My goodness. Oh my goodness, love it. All templates, all schedules. Let me just do a bit of a refresh on this. Sorry, guys. Technology, you've got to love it. Ah, silly me. I was in the wrong area. Don't mind me. Duplicates. There we go. So if we're talking about duplicates, these are some of the things that will start to pick up around duplicate transactions. You know, have duplicate bills been paid? Have duplicate bills been raised? Have you got duplicate contacts? Of duplicate invoices? And we're talking sales invoices paid and raised. So, you know, data quality around the bookkeeping function in our practice can be actually picked up and managed quite nicely within XBert. ABN's another big focus of what we work on. And when we start to look at the impact of incorrect ABNs or cancelled ABNs or ABNs that aren't registered for GST, we know that often they're big points of review within the bookkeeping cycle or the accounting cycle. And utilising XBert to actually pick those up as the transaction hits the ledger really does simplify the remediation of those in an immediacy. So you can do it today. You're not tracking back through it, you know, months and months after. And if you're picking up things like ABN anomalies on tax invoices, imagine the value to the client if they're not paying a tax invoice where GST's been charged and the ABN's been cancelled, or the client's actually not registered for GST. So you're proving value to the clients because you're picking up these things earlier and you're able to have those strategic conversations with your clients earlier, but you're also emphasizing and working on the standard of data quality within your clients' files. Things like cancelled. And again, you know, cancelled suppliers, ABN, which is sort of linked back to what we were just talking about then. Payroll. So if we're looking at payroll type elements around the quality side of things, you know, things like employee superannuation contributions. And I think this is going to be a really interesting one as we transition across 30th of June in, you know, accounting files where the superannuation guarantee has been set as a non-statutory rate. So, you know, perhaps somebody's gone in and overridden it thinking that they're doing the right thing, but when it kicks into 12% from 1 July, it doesn't automatically update. So I think these are really cool alerts, particularly at this time of the financial year. You know, have we paid the superannuation? Again, a timely thing. You don't want your clients being hit with things like superannuation guarantee charge statements and all of the hassle and the punitive action that actually goes along with that. And the other thing that I really like is, you know, the stuff, excuse me, the stuff that we've just looked at is very much about the transactions in the ledger. But imagine as well, if you were able to bring data quality alerts around the work that you're actually undertaking for and on behalf of your clients. So, you know, internally, how are you managing the tasks? Are there tasks being completed with no time entry? Does that mean you're not picking up the correct time for billing purposes? We look at things like tasks exceeding estimated time. Are your team members working efficiently? Do you need to review some training for a team member? Do you need to review your processes? Is this a particular client that is potentially bringing in out of scope activities? So again, it's about doing things smarter and better with your existing resources and being alerted when those exceptions actually start to float to the top. Um, tasks where multiple users have entered time, why is perhaps one or more people actually starting to work on this particular task? So these are examples, really, really good examples of all of the different types of alerts that you can surface automatically within XBert. And then on top of that, you've actually got the ability to work with custom experts. Now, I'm not going to step into those because, they're really just limited by your imagination, but it's a great way for you to start to customize alerts that are important to you, your team, your client mix, and how you want to interface with your clients. So I'm going to stop sharing this again now and reshare back up our demo, our PowerPoint, which is great. And yes, the system works. All right. So, we've sort of demoed quickly the functionality that you get out of XBert. And, when we talk about the concept of practice intelligence, we're talking about in the context of scaling without burnout. And what does practice intelligence really mean? It's about centralized visibility across your clients, it's across your staff, and it's across the risks. It's about tracking team capacity and progress without micromanaging. You don't have to micromanage down to the lowest level. You can let the exception reporting in XBert actually track things for you. With practice intelligence, you really start to gain visibility and not just into tasks, but into your team's capacity and risk. So again, it's about doing things smarter with your existing team or your existing resources. This also supports your team well-being whilst you're trying to scale in terms of work, because you know how people are tracking against the work that you've got coming in. Do you have capacity to move work from one team member to another, or do you need to actually think of additional resources, or can you be smarter in the way that you're doing the work? And it's actually about proactive leadership. So it's actually not going in and firefighting and putting out those flames. It's about being proactive in the information that you're surfacing. In real terms, what are the impacts of smart practice intelligence? So from bookkeepers, it's about staying ahead of the workload, being in front of what you need to do and not actually continuing to sort of fight those fires that we've been talking about. And for accountants, I think it's about starting to see really workflow patterns and performance without necessarily chasing. So you've got the ability with custom experts and experts to be really strategic about different things potentially in your client's financial data and getting those anomalies surfaced rather than you having to continuously, rinse and check and go through things. It will surface what you need to know when you need to know it. And what can you achieve with smart practice intelligence? So, you can make faster decisions around things. You can look at insight-led upsells, and that's a really interesting consideration as well. And there's often smoother collaboration between your teams. Now, that could be smoother collaboration between an external bookkeeper and external accountant, or if you've got a hybrid practice internally, there's smoother collaboration between the teams. And this is how smart firms are actually scaling. They're scaling without hiring, and they're reading the data and they're responding, and they're not actually guessing, they're reacting. So they're utilizing it to make strategic decisions around smart firms. Now, one of the things that we're going to send out post-webinar is a couple of worksheets or a couple of documents that talk about, smart teams. And it's a bit of a checklist to sort of see whether or not you've got a smart team already in place and where you could perhaps consider different things. So one of the things, it's about seeing data and it's about using data. And, when we talk about scaling, firms can add new services in like payroll and BAS after perhaps using XBert to spot trends. One firm chose to add payroll and BAS services after XBert continued to alert them of compliance issues with the client generated data. So the client was doing the work, continuous issues coming up. It triggered a conversation between the firm and the client saying, hey, we're actually having to resolve these, at a higher cost for you at the end of a reporting period or at the end of whatever. you could actually work more effectively if we took that burden off of you. So it's a real opportunity for you to identify where the problems are and start to offer your clients smart and strategic solutions around how you'd actually be solving those. It becomes a simple conversation with the clients. It lets them step back and it lets them do what they do best, which is actually working on their business and delivering their services out to their clients. So, you know, put people in the right roles, and that includes your client. Your client's role, if they're a mechanic, they're not a bookkeeper or an accountant. Let them do what they do really, really well. We've seen others increase client loads without hiring because of workflow automation. Imagine being able to absorb 20% more clients using automated task templates, doing the same things over and over again. Because everybody's working to the same songbook, work's consistent, people become better and more efficient at completing work. If it's automated and if it's standardized, it frees up that capacity that you actually already have within your practice by being smarter about the work that you're already doing. So what are some of the common traits of firms that have used XBert to turn their, insights into actions? You can start small. You actually don't have to do it all at once. Choose a piece of work that you do most frequently for your clients and map out the process, build the automation, set up the schedules, and then rinse, wash, and repeat across all of the work that you do for your clients. Consider the repeating work that you do that's actually not done to a schedule, and think about things like client onboarding and client offboarding, ATO payment plans. How do you set up a chattel mortgage? Get this work mapped out so that when it's triggered, it can be done and handled by anybody within your firm. And I found often that one of the best triggers to actually start to map out process was the inevitable question that you get from a team member that says, we need to do this for a client, but I'm not sure how it should be done. That's a really, really great trigger to say, actually, I now need to map out a process around that. And build repeatable systems. And yeah, repeatable. You shouldn't be doing the same piece of work in different ways for different clients. We know there's client nuances, but XBert can actually cover this really, really nicely with client-specific notes. But the fundamental methodology in terms of the work that you're delivering should remain the same over and over again. Engage with your team. They'll have really, really great insights on what is and isn't working. But you also need to bring them on a journey with you, ensure that they actually don't go rogue. So, if you've got a process, run with it. If it's not working, get the feedback and then change the process. Don't let your team go rogue and start to work independently away from it. You know, Continuous improvement is a great thing to consider. And again, under the QMS framework and smart practice framework, a continuous improvement cycle is something that we should all be doing. Take suggestions, analyze the impact. If they're a benefit to the team and the quality of the work that you're delivering for the clients, build them into your systems. And trust insights and not your gut feel. So use the data that you're capturing. You want to know how you're tracking for a client. And I know we do rely a lot sometimes on gut, but being able to use a product like XBert to surface those actual insights really gives you strong and strategic information to work with when you're talking to your clients. If you're fixed fee billing, are you working within the scope of the engagement? Are you capturing time for out of scope work? Is your work balanced across your team, and are the right people doing the right type of work? So as I said, we're going to send out some checklists that are going to give you a whole heap of things to look into around, what is a blueprint for a smart practice. The other thing to think about is expansion doesn't require upheaval. You don't need to start from scratch to grow your service offerings. Bookkeepers can actually package what they already do. Accountants can add light touch bookkeeping potentially for priority clients. And as we said, XBert lets you really create repeatable alert-driven service layers. Service templates, alerts for upsell triggers, role-based delivery. So not one person necessarily does everything. And an analysis of what service lines are going to give you the best ROI is also one of the pieces you can actually extract out of XBert. Can you offer that service to other clients? And again, we'll include this sort of information in the checklists that we've sent out. So what we want you to do is use what you've already got, refined with visibility and repeatability, rather than continuously reinventing the wheel. We want you to be able to plug and play, not rip and replace. So you don't need to change your whole system. XBert integrates with the QBOs, the other accounting products. Start with 1 or 2 clients, see the results, and then scale from there. It can be an incremental implementation. It can start, as we said, with the things that you do most frequently or within the next work cycle. And the change management side of things actually starts with the leaders within the practice. You need to be engaged and need to be supportive around that. But don't forget to engage your team in the practice and the processes as well. They work with the clients on a daily basis. They understand the detail of the work that's being undertaken. Use the skills and the knowledge that they have got and bring in the collaboration. And it's a great way to get buy-in and streamline the uptake of new tools that you're bringing into your practice as well. And don't forget the value of peer review. So if you don't think a process is working, don't just change it unilaterally. Have a feedback channel or, continuous improvement loop in place so that change can be reviewed in the context of the whole of the practice operations and agreed upon. So that can be effectively managed and rolled out. And as I said earlier, you don't want to be going rogue with those sorts of things. So, the smart firm mindset, the smart firm doesn't just work harder, it works smarter. Use alerts, reduce rework, empower your team, and scale confidently. Take control of the situation, fix the workflows, not just the output. Use the alerts as your silent co-pilot. That's really good. They just happen in the background there. Create the clarity across the team. Everybody's playing from the same songbook. You're not doing different things. And use real data to evolve the services and increase your margins. That's what smart firms are doing, and that's the mindset behind them. So as I said, we'll be sending out the Smarter Firm Blueprint, and that's a roadmap about how you can actually scale your services and support your teams and grow client value without necessarily growing your headcount. We're actually also going to include a service expansion readiness checklist, and that's a little bit of a self-assessment tool to evaluate if your firm is ready to start to broaden your service offerings. So before you do that, you might want to get things in place before you start to do it, but it's a checklist just to see how your firm's particularly progressing there. All right, so we're almost at the end. You've heard me talking around this, and obviously we would love to find out whether you'd like to hear more from XBert. There's a poll that's just jumped up on the screen. If you'd like to hear some more for us, please just sort of drop that in there. I know the Growth Firm are going to be sending out some post session webinars. We do have an option at the moment that if you're a new user to XBert and you do sign up before the 30th of June, so you've got a few days to do that, we're offering 30% off for 3 months for all new account sign up. So if that's something you'd like to explore and understand more how you can become a smarter firm and learn how you can potentially start to expand your services or do more work within your existing resources, we would love to have a chat to you. As I said, use the Smarter Firm Blueprint when it's sent to you. Use the service expansion checklist to guide what your next move will be. And we look forward to seeing what this can actually do for your practice. So really, from me, that's it. I'd like to say thank you. And if anybody's got any questions, I'm not sure if anything's popped up or if we've got time lists for any questions. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Cass. So there Cass, and then there's another one. If someone can